Have you guys ever wondered whether it is possible to build a PC that is better than your toaster, which is cheap enough that even you can afford it? So we tried to build a PC which runs basically all games you need and tested and overclocked it through. I can't read the word in the script. Wait a minute.
Thoroughly.
Alright, here we go again. In this video, we are going to explain which parts we used, the benchmarks, and some in-game testing. We mainly used second-hand hardware we purchased online, so let's talk about the parts we chose. As CPU, we are using an old Intel i7 processor. It's over 9 years old and it's part of the legendary Sandy Bridge architecture. It's the i7 2600K, so it's a CPU which you can overclock. It is very nice in thermal exchange because of the old-fashioned soldered heat spreader. We were able to get our old i7 2600K up to 4.6 GHz, which is really good, and this on a core voltage of 1.3 volts. We used the old GTX 680 by Nvidia from 2012, so it's more than 8 years old. Being high-end 8 years ago, and cause we live in the present, we decided to go a bit farther than usually when it comes to overclocking. We have 2 GB of GDDR5 VRAM clocking at 3000 MHz and a GPU clock of around about 1000 MHz. To get enough performance, we needed more power. That's why we decided to step OC up and we wrote our own custom BIOS. With our own OC BIOS of the old Kepler GTX 680, RAM now clocks up to 3400 MHz with a GPU clock of 1300 MHz. We took 2 RAM modules with 4 gigs per module, which adds up to a total of, spoiler alert, 8 gigs of RAM. They are all DDR3 modules, but at least the heat spreader looks pretty decent. Alright, what shall I say? If you have more money, then go ahead and get a freaking SSD, guys. For real, you never ever want to work with those shitty drives. I think it took me more than 1.5 hours until Windows was finally installed. Not funny at all. Anyway, we got 500 GB of HDD and yeah, it's just not funny. But for those of you wondering and thinking, yo guys, you could go ahead and spend like $32 more, then it's the €200 PC, that's still a decent value. And yes, maybe you're right, we could do that. Get a small SSD for Windows and like 1 or 2 games. But there's a 69 in our PC.
69, it's funny because it's a weird number. LOL, Lemao.
Okay, CPU cooler. The cooler is an Arctic Freezer 13, which actually is a pretty decent cooler, and it should even be enough to deal with our heavily overclocked Sandy Bridge CPU. For getting it all together, we used an old Gigabyte board with the LGA 11T55 socket. The board has all we need and it is enough for this overclocked scenario. As PSU, we are using an old Corsair power supply with 500 watts. It's not pretty. Has it got any options for cable management? Hell no, but it's strong enough for our system and at least it's not a firecracker for which you're only waiting for it to light up and fry your nice cheap hardware. To hold our stuff together, we got an old Chacun case, and yeah, it's not super fancy, has close to zero space for cable management, has no PSU cage, isn't looking pretty, and of course has a broken front audio. But guys, that's a feature. Basically, it just exists. That's pretty much all it does. So that's our system.
Coming to benchmarks, we tested Firestrike, TimeSpy and Skydive. Firestrike went pretty decent and we got heavy advantages of OSE, as we added about 1000 points in graphics score and 2500 points in physics, coming to a total of 7246 points in OC. TimeSpy got us 2247 points in graphics and 3846 points in physics, coming to a total of 2396 points. In Skydive, we get up to 26,774 points in graphics and 9,973 points in physics, giving us a total of 20,890 points. For the games we tested CSGO, Valorant, Overwatch, Rainbow Six Siege, Fortnite, Apex, GTA 5, Far Cry 5 and Assassin's Creed Origins. In the good old toaster test CSGO at very good settings we got an average FPS of 130, but I mean no one accepted anything different in the OG toaster tester. In Valorant, which is actually pretty GPU heavy, we still get 60 FPS at maximum settings, but also we are fairly certain that Valorant automatically capped it here. Overwatch is optimized for higher clock speeds on the CPU with few cores, so it's a win for us with 100 FPS average at very good settings. Fortnite, which is actually a pretty CPU heavy game, still gave us 110 FPS at high settings. Watch out, watch out, watch out! In the Rainbow Six Siege benchmark, which includes many visual effects such as for example Breach, we ended up with 106 FPS on average at good settings. In Apex, which is another very popular game with decent graphics, we got about 70 FPS average at high settings. Far Cry 5 is a very decent AAA title, so that also explains the kinda low average FPS of 40 at good settings. Assassin's Creed, another AAA game, still gave us playable 30 FPS at high settings. And last but not least, we tested GTA 5 at very high settings. The game actually says you don't have enough resources, but trust us, it's working. Here we are reaching 63 FPS average, 1% lows of 40 FPS and 0.1% lows of 29 FPS. In GTA Online, we tested different scenarios from cruising through a city up to tactical war simulation. Here we are reaching 63 FPS average, 1% lows of 40 FPS and 0.1% lows of 29 FPS. So as you can see, it's fairly well playable.
Hey guys, so as you can see, it's pretty easy to build a gaming PC even with a low budget, and it's still strong enough for current games. You might do some overclocking, you might have to rework like the graphics card cooler, but it is possible. If you have any ideas for next videos, just let us know in the comments down below. If you wanna give feedback, just type it into the comments. If you enjoyed that video, it would be a pleasure if you could hit the like button or subscribe. Thank you for watching until this point. See you next time.